You know how everyone loves a good underdog story? Well, buckle up, because Earth is the ultimate underdog in this galaxy. Picture this: a bunch of overconfident alien civilizations, the so-called elite of the universe, are all sitting around, patting each other on the back, talking about how they've wiped out entire planets, destroyed entire species, and generally just made the galaxy their playground. And then they look down at Earth. What do? They laugh. Oh yeah, the whole "look at those puny humans" thing. It's practically the galaxy's favorite joke. But what happens when the humans actually decide to stand up? Well, let's just say the last laugh might not be theirs. Earth's got this little thing called spirit, something these aliens clearly don't understand. They think we're just some tiny, fragile species with no real power. But hey, we've been underestimated before, right? And we always find a way to prove those underestimating us wrong. Now, we're not exactly packing the firepower of the alien armies, but we've got something they can't handle: ingenuity. And a little bit of sarcasm. Okay, maybe a lot of sarcasm. And a whole bunch of weird human stuff they can't even begin to comprehend. So when these big, bad aliens start laughing at Earth, just remember this: when humans stand up, it's game on. Because in case these galaxy-sized bullies missed the memo, there's one thing Earth knows how to do better than anyone else: surprise. And these aliens, well, they're about to learn the hard way that underestimating Earthlings isn't just a mistake. It's the last mistake they'll ever make. Stick around, because what happens next will leave you laughing in disbelief. The real power of humanity is about to shine through, and no amount of alien arrogance is going to stop it. Meet Captain Jake Bennett, Earth's unofficial ambassador to the galaxy. Well, technically, he's the commander of one of the most important military units in the Terran Alliance, but don't let the title fool you. Jake's not the type to stand at attention and salute. No, Jake's more of a casual but highly competent kind of guy. His uniform's always just a little wrinkled, his hair slightly unkempt, and his attitude, well, let's just say he doesn't care much for the whole serious business vibe that everyone else seems to love. Jake's been through his fair share of battles, from alien invasions to intergalactic misunderstandings. But he's not the kind of guy to boast about it. Why would he? It's just another day at the office. He's seen it all, well, almost. There's always something new to keep him on his toes. But one thing's for sure: he's not afraid to face whatever the galaxy throws at him, even if that means talking back to some 7-foot alien with mandibles that could probably tear through steel. In fact, that's kind of Jake's thing. He doesn't back down from anyone, no matter how intimidating they look. And speaking of intimidation, you'd think that a guy with Jake's job title would be a little more serious, but nope. Jake's sense of humor is as sharp as his combat skills, and he's got no problem turning a dangerous situation into a sarcastic commentary on life. The whole idea of diplomacy and first contact is lost on him. He prefers to make jokes in the face of danger and throw in a few snarky remarks for good measure. It's almost as if he enjoys making aliens uncomfortable, because honestly he does. When Earth first made contact with these intergalactic superpowers, Jake was the one they sent to handle things. They needed someone who could speak the universal language of sarcasm while keeping the peace, and lucky for them, Jake's got both in spades. While other commanders might be all about respect and formalities, Jake is more about making sure the aliens know they're not dealing with just some weakling species. If humanity's going to survive in this vast, uncaring galaxy, it's going to take more than just a few fancy weapons. It's going to take brains, resilience, and a lot of attitude. Now, don't mistake Jake's laid-back, sarcastic style for a lack of seriousness. He's got the skills to back it up. A top strategist, a sharp tactician, and more than capable in a fight, Jake isn't someone you want to mess with. He knows when to crack a joke and when to flip the switch and get down to business. He's got an almost supernatural ability to stay calm under pressure, and when things get messy, He's the guy everyone looks to for a solution, but here's the catch. He doesn't exactly play by the rules. While others are following procedures, Jake is already thinking 2 steps ahead, sometimes breaking protocol in ways that make his superiors want to pull their hair out. But hey, it usually works out in the end. At least, it does when Jake's in charge. One thing you'll quickly learn about Jake is that he's not afraid to make fun of just about anything, especially the aliens that think they're better than Earth. Take the Zakituth Dominion, for example. These giant insectoid creatures came barging in with their superior intellect and unstoppable military might. Yeah, sure, they might be massive and terrifying, but Jake, he's the first one to make a joke about their weird clicking language and their obsession with superior technology. He's got no time for their grandiose ideas about galactic conquest. Instead, he spends his time finding ways to make them uncomfortable, usually by asking questions they can't answer. Jake's style isn't for everyone, but that's exactly what makes him so effective. He doesn't intimidate the aliens by trying to out-militarize them. He does it by making them second-guess everything they thought they knew about humans. And let's be real, who can take a threat seriously when it's being delivered by someone who's casually sipping coffee while talking smack to a 10-foot alien? But despite his cocky demeanor, Jake's got a soft spot for Earth. He may crack jokes, but he genuinely cares about keeping humanity safe. And deep down, he knows that Earth isn't just some helpless rock in the middle of nowhere. He's here to prove that humanity's got a lot more to offer than anyone could have ever imagined. Because while the aliens are all obsessed with power and technology, Jake knows that what truly makes humans dangerous isn't our weapons, it's our ability to adapt, to outthink, and to fight back when no one expects it. And if that means using sarcasm as a weapon, well, he's happy to be the guy to wield it. So yeah, Jake Bennett might not fit the usual mold of a military leader, but he's exactly what Earth needs. The universe can laugh at humans all it wants. Jake will be there with a smirk on his face, making sure those laughs don't last too long. The first time humanity made contact with the Zakituth Dominion, it didn't exactly go as planned. To say it was awkward would be an understatement, but that's what happens when aliens, let's call them superior beings, look down on Earth and assume they're dealing with nothing more than a primitive species with no business being in the galactic spotlight. Enter Admiral Vex Thara, the self-proclaimed leader of the Zakituth, who took one look at Earth and its military forces and burst into laughter. And not just a chuckle, mind you. This was a full-on, belly-laughing, mandibles clacking, I can't believe this is even happening kind of laughter. Admiral Vex Thara was, in his own words, the most terrifying creature in the galaxy. His insectoid appearance, 7 feet tall with razor-sharp mandibles, claws that could slice through rock, and eyes that looked like they belonged to something out of a nightmare, was enough to make even the bravest soldier think twice. But to Vex Thara, humans were no more than a cosmic joke. He couldn't believe that Earth had somehow stumbled into this galactic mess and thought they had any business being there. When he first addressed Jake Bennett, who was standing there trying to represent Earth, he couldn't help himself. So this is what we're dealing with. Vex chuckled, his voice vibrating in a way that sounded like 1,000 flies buzzing at once. A hairless ape with weapons that couldn't even scratch my exoskeleton. His massive, armored frame shifted, and his antennae twitched in amusement. As he looked Jake up and down, Jake, however, didn't flinch. In fact, he looked entirely unfazed. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you've been talking to, but I'm pretty sure we didn't show up on your radar because we're the galaxy's most intimidating species. If you want to take us out, be my guest, but you might want to check your calendar, because it's not your turn to wipe us out yet." Vex's laughter grew louder, echoing through the room. "Oh, how cute! The little monkey thinks it can talk back." He wiped away a tear from the corner of his eye. Clearly, entertained by Jake's nonchalance. "Tell me, what exactly do you humans think you can do? You're so fragile, you can barely survive a trip into deep space. And your weapons, I've seen more lethal things from a puddle of slime." Jake rolled his eyes. "Look, I get it. You're big, you're strong. You've probably wiped out entire planets with a snap of your mandibles. But let's not get carried away. You think you're the only species in the galaxy with a little bit of firepower?" He raised an eyebrow. "News flash, pal. We've got a few tricks up our sleeves that you wouldn't even begin to understand." At this, Vex paused. For the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes, but he quickly dismissed it, deciding to double down on his mockery. "Tricks?" He let out another peal of laughter. "What you mean, like you're advanced? Weapons? Please? The most terrifying thing about your weapons is how loud they are. Do you seriously think you can intimidate me with a few lasers and a couple of bombs?" Jake leaned back, giving a little shrug. "Well, it's not about intimidation. It's about how well you can adapt to new situations. I'm sure that's something you're great at, right? Because, I gotta be honest, you don't seem like the adaptable type." This was starting to get under Vex's skin. He couldn't help but look down at Jake with a mix of curiosity and annoyance. "Adaptability? What do you know about adaptation, Earthling? Your species is lucky to survive a single storm, let alone make it to the stars." Jake grinned. But that's where you're wrong. We might not have your shiny tech or your giant scary frames, but we've been adapting to crazy situations. For centuries. From surviving an asteroid impact that nearly wiped us out to figuring out how to thrive in environments that would send you packing in 5 minutes. Yeah, we're pretty good at it." Vex raised an antenna, clearly more intrigued. Now, though, still not convinced. "So you survive, but you thrive? Tell me, what exactly makes you think you're special enough to survive us? What's your secret weapon, Jake's expression softened into something that could almost be called a smirk. "It's not so much a weapon, buddy. It's more of a mindset. A little thing we like to call ingenuity. You might have the muscle, but when it comes to thinking outside the box, that's where we shine." Vex was now frowning. He didn't know whether to laugh or be genuinely concerned. "Invention, humans? Your species can barely build a functional spaceship without crashing it halfway through the galaxy." Jake's grin grew wider. "And yet, here we are, sitting in your fancy little ship, talking to you. Funny how that works, huh?" Vex, still not sure how to take this, looked to his crew for reassurance, but they were all either silent or nervously glancing at each other. Jake had thrown them off balance with his words, and the longer this went on, the more uncomfortable they became. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. They were supposed to laugh at the humans, not the other way around. The Zakaturth commander shifted uneasily. "So what you're saying is that you can somehow stand against us? That you, with your fragile little bodies and puny minds, have what it takes to survive?" His voice grew quieter, almost threatening. Jake's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Well, it's not like we're planning on beating you with brute force. That'd be silly. We're smarter than that." He crossed his arms, leaning back in his seat. "But we're not as fragile as you think either." Vex's antennae twitched as his frustration built. The humans, these tiny creatures, were making him question everything he thought he knew. Sure, he still believed in Zakaturth's superiority, but something about Jake Bennett's cocky attitude was starting to chip away at his confidence, and that was exactly what Jake had been aiming for. Jake couldn't help but let out a chuckle as Vex Thara's latest comment hung in the air. The aliens were clearly trying to poke fun at Earth, and while Jake was all for defending his species, he wasn't about to take any of it too seriously. They had no idea what they were dealing with, so he decided to meet their mockery head-on, using sarcasm, wit, and the kind of analogies that made no sense at all but somehow worked perfectly in his favor. "Okay, Vex, Jake said, leaning back casually in his chair, his hands folded behind his head. You want to talk about how puny and fragile we are? Fine, let's compare us to, oh, I don't know, a rubber band. Yeah, a rubber band. Hear me out. Vex's antennae twitched, clearly unamused. A rubber band? He asked, his voice full of skepticism. Jake smiled. Oh, yeah, a rubber band is strong, right? I mean, you stretch it, it gets tighter and tighter, and you think, okay, this thing's going to snap any second now. But what happens? It doesn't snap. It just keeps stretching and stretching, and when you least expect it, bam, it fires. Something at your face. But not just any fire, an incredibly annoying, stinging snap. The alien's confused gaze shifted to his crew, clearly not getting the analogy. But Jake was on a roll now. See? That's Earth. We're like the rubber band. You think we're just gonna snap under pressure, but really, we're just stretching, waiting for the right moment. And when it comes, we're gonna hit you with something so unexpected you won't even know what happened. Jake gave a cheeky wink. And you know what? We don't even need a fancy spaceship to do it. Just a little human creativity. Vex's eyes narrowed. He wasn't sure if Jake was trying to make fun of him or if this whole rubber band thing was some deep human philosophy. Either way, it wasn't working. But Jake wasn't done. You know, Jake continued, leaning forward with a sly grin, if you really want to understand humans, maybe you should think of us like, I don't know, a sponge. Yeah, a sponge. Stick with me on this one. A few of the aliens began to murmur among themselves, completely lost. Jake went on, unaffected by their confusion. Humans are like sponges. We don't just soak up information, we absorb everything. You can throw us into the ocean, make us fight against things way bigger than us, and we'll still keep soaking up knowledge. And just when you think we've absorbed enough, boom, we squeeze it all out, and the world's better for it. He paused dramatically. It's a mess, but it works. Jake chuckled as he could almost see the gears turning in Vex's insect brain. It wasn't quite processing, and that was the best part. They were so caught up in their superiority that they had no idea what was going on. Jake leaned back again, letting the silence drag on for a moment before he added, So, you see, Admiral, we may not have the toughest exterior, but we've got brains, we've got heart, and we've got a whole lot of stuff we're just waiting to unleash. Vex wasn't laughing anymore. His annoyance was starting to bubble up, but Jake wasn't about to back off now. He'd made his point, and now he was going to drive it home. And if you want another analogy, well, I've got plenty more. You see, humans are kind of like an overcooked steak. Yeah, stay with me here. It's tough, right? Super hard to chew, maybe a little dry, but when you put in the right amount of effort, when you push past that tough outer layer, it's surprisingly flavorful. Jake paused, giving a dramatic sigh. You aliens may have your superior technology, but trust me, you've never tasted a real steak. He smiled at Vex's blank expression, and you sure as hell won't with your 6-inch claws. But hey, you do you. Vex's face was now a mix of frustration and confusion. Are you really comparing your species to a steak? Jake gave a wide grin. Of course I am. You don't get it, do you? Humans don't just give up when things get tough. We push through. That's what makes us special. We keep going, we adapt, and we keep finding ways to make the impossible work. You think our weapons are the only thing we've got? Nah, it's the way we think that makes us dangerous. Jake stood up now, pacing back and forth in front of the aliens. See, this is where you're missing it. You think we're just fragile little things because you look at us and yeah, maybe we don't have the shiny exoskeletons or the laser beams that shoot out of our heads, though give us time, I'm sure we'll get there. But the thing you keep forgetting is that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our tech, it's how we use it. He looked Vex right in the eyes. We take what we've got and make it work, no matter the odds. And sure, we'll stumble, we'll make mistakes, But that's the thing with humans. We learn from those mistakes, and when we do, we come back stronger. Jake's grin never left his face as he finished. So keep laughing. Underestimate. It's all you want. But at the end of the day, the last thing you'll hear before we snap like that rubber band is the sound of your overinflated ego crashing down to Earth. The longer the aliens spent with Jake and the humans, the more confused they became. It wasn't just that Earthlings didn't have the latest in galactic tech or the impressive physical traits that most aliens found so desirable. It was that humans, these tiny, fragile creatures, had a strange way of thinking that completely baffled them. And the more the aliens tried to figure it out, the more they found themselves lost in the absurdity of human culture. Take, for example, the concept of sports. To the aliens, the idea of running around kicking a ball or throwing something through a hoop was utterly pointless. So naturally, they decided to get Jake to explain it to them. "Jake Bennett," said one of the alien officers, a creature with tentacles that barely fit in its chair. "Explain this. Football, as you call it. I've studied the movement of your species during these events, and I still fail to comprehend. You're telling me that your entire species gets excited about chasing a small ball around the ground." It paused for a moment, clearly trying to compute. Why would you engage in this activity when you could instead be expanding your knowledge or improving your technology? This is illogical. Jake gave a sly grin. "Well, you've got to understand. Football isn't just about chasing a ball. It's about working together. It's about strategy, teamwork, and of course a little bit of running around like your legs are on fire. It's also how humans unwind, have fun, and bond. You know, relax." The alien blinked. "Relax? That is what you call relaxation? How does this help your species advance? You seem to spend hours, days even, watching these events. It's unfathomable." The tentacled creature made a series of beeping sounds, clearly frustrated. Jake chuckled. "It's simple. We need something to keep our minds sharp and take a break from the serious stuff. You guys are all about conquering planets and acting all superior, but what do you do when it's time to relax? Just sit there and click your mandibles?" The alien tried to respond, but its mandibles made an odd noise, a sound somewhere between confusion and offense. "We do not have time for such games. We are busy expanding the Dominion." Jake raised his hands in mock apology. "Right, of course. You've got big plans to take over the universe. And here we are, just kicking balls around, wasting our precious time." He gave an exaggerated shrug. "Guess we just have a lot of free time on our hands, huh?" The alien officer was left speechless, its confusion growing deeper by the second. But it wasn't just sports that the aliens couldn't understand. Earth's whole concept of entertainment was a mystery to them. Movies, television shows, music, things that most humans used to escape or express themselves just didn't make sense in the same way to these advanced beings. One alien tried to wrap its head around the idea of movies, but it only got more confused. "So you sit in dark rooms and look at a flat surface where moving images play, and you pretend these are real?" The alien's face was a mass of quizzical expression, like it was trying to solve a puzzle that was missing half the pieces. "Why not just see the real thing? Why bother with illusions?" Jake smirked, clearly enjoying this. "Well, that's the thing. It's not about seeing the real thing. It's about experiencing something different. It's like pretending you're somewhere else. You're getting to feel emotions, live a life that isn't your own, and see the world from someone else's perspective. It's art, man." The alien tilted its head, the tentacles wrapping tighter around its body. "Art? What is art? We have seen your primitive art, paintings and other non-functional objects. Why waste precious time on such meaningless tasks?" Jake shook his head. "See, that's the problem. You aliens are so focused on functionality, you've completely missed out on what makes life interesting. Art is about expression. It's about seeing the world differently and using creativity to show what it means to be alive. But hey, if you prefer staring at the same sterile walls and thinking that's all there is to life, more power to you. Ciao. Alien couldn't argue with that, so it just made a low, confused hum and turned away. Clearly, this whole art thing was way beyond its intellectual grasp, but the misunderstandings didn't stop there. As they continued their investigation into Earth culture, the aliens turned their attention to something far more dangerous: food. Yes, food. Now, the Zakitoth Dominion was all about practical things. Anything that didn't immediately serve a practical purpose was beyond them. So naturally, when they saw Jake enjoying a burger, they had to ask about it. "You eat this meat patty between two pieces of bread?" one alien asked, tentacles twitching in disgust. "What is the purpose of this strange arrangement?" Jake paused mid-bite, looking up with a grin. "It's simple. You see, this is a hamburger. The meat is packed with protein, the bread makes it portable, and the condiments add flavor. It's fast, efficient, and packed with all the good stuff. But really, it's all about taste. I'm guessing you've never had a good burger, huh?" The alien recoiled, as if it had been offered something poisonous. "Taste? What is taste? Why would you ingest something for its taste and not its functional value?" Jake threw his hands up in mock frustration. "Man, you guys really are missing the point, aren't you? Taste is everything. You don't understand how important food is to human culture, how we bond over meals, how a good dish can make you feel like you've won the lottery. But you wouldn't get it. You're too busy worrying about whether your food is going to help you conquer a planet." The alien blinked, but it was clear it was completely lost. The whole concept of food as something enjoyable and cultural was far beyond the Zakitoth Dominion's comprehension. As the aliens continued to probe deeper into human culture, it became clearer by the minute that their entire worldview was based on logic and efficiency. Everything had to serve a purpose. They simply couldn't grasp how humans could waste time, space, or energy on things like sports, movies, art, or even something as mundane as a hamburger. Jake found the whole situation hilarious. "Look, I get it," he said with a grin. "We humans aren't exactly efficient by your standards, but that's because we don't just live for function. We live for fun, for feeling, for creativity, and that's something you'll never understand because, well, you're all just too serious." And with that, the gap between human and alien minds only grew wider. The aliens couldn't understand it, and frankly, Jake didn't care if they ever did. He was having too much fun watching them try. By now, the aliens were starting to realize that humanity wasn't the weak, helpless species they'd initially thought. But they still couldn't figure out exactly how humans had managed to survive in a galaxy filled with far superior beings and technologies. So Jake decided to explain, well, over-explain, just what made human ingenuity so special, and he wasn't about to make it easy for the aliens. In fact, he was going to make it as confusing and absurd as possible, because why not? If they were going to underestimate humans, they might as well leave with their minds completely scrambled. Jake leaned back in his chair, putting his hands behind his head, and gave the aliens a smug grin. "All right, let me break it down for you. You've been wondering how humans have survived this long, right? Well, let me explain it in the simplest way possible. You ready for this? Humans are like hamsters." The aliens blinked. "Hamsters?" One of them asked. "What is this creature you speak of?" Jake chuckled. "Yes, you know, little fuzzy animals that run on a wheel all day, thinking they're going somewhere. They'll run, and you think, this poor thing's never going to get anywhere. But guess what? That hamster's not dumb. That hamster's figuring out how to adapt to its situation. Because here's the thing. Hamsters, just like humans, don't give up easily. We keep going. Even when it feels like we're stuck in a cage, we figure out a way to break out. That's human ingenuity. Jake looked around at the confused faces of the aliens. But you probably think, wait a minute, how does running on a wheel relate to galactic survival, right? Well, here's how it works. Humans have this superpower called adaptability. It's like when you're stuck in a bad situation and you have two choices, give up or figure it out. And guess what? We always figure it out. It doesn't matter if it's building a spaceship or trying to fix a broken toaster. Humans make it work. One of the aliens tilted its head, trying to process what Jake had just said. So you are saying that your species survives by adapting to its environment, even when that environment is hostile? Jake nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. You see, humans don't have fancy, impenetrable exoskeletons like some of you, or mind-blowing tech that makes you feel all superior. What we've got is a crazy ability to make the best out of whatever we've got. We adapt, we learn, we take the scraps we're given and turn them into something that can save the day. The aliens were still unsure, but this seems inefficient, one of them said. Why not just conquer and control your environment outright like we do? Jake grinned. Ah, you've got the whole conquer everything thing down, don't you? But that's where you've got it wrong. You think conquering is the answer, but the truth is, adaptability is what keeps us ahead. You guys rely on brute strength, shiny tech, and overwhelming power. But humans, we use brains, and sometimes a lot of trial and error. But hey, we always come out on top. And when we can't conquer the world, we find a way to make it work anyway. The aliens were still shaking their heads, clearly not getting it. So Jake decided to break it down even further using a different analogy. All right, picture this, Jake said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Humans are like MacGyver. Yeah, remember him? The guy who can take a paperclip, a rubber band, and some chewing gum and make a bomb out of it? That's what we do. We take the most ridiculous things and turn them into something useful. Jake paused for effect, watching the aliens try to wrap their heads around that concept. You've got these fancy gadgets and weapons, right? Big, impressive tools that look like they can solve any problem. But here's the thing, humans don't need all that. We've got duct tape. And guess what? Duct tape has saved us more times than I can count. We don't need to be powerful to survive. We just need to be resourceful. It's like that hamster again. No fancy tools, but somehow we always manage to find a way out of the cage. The aliens looked at each other, clearly baffled. One of them even looked like it was going to ask about this duct tape thing, but decided against it. They were already far too lost. So Jake decided to hit them with one last analogy just for fun. Here's the kicker, he said, his grin widening. Humans are like puzzles. Yeah, I know, a puzzle doesn't seem that impressive, right? But think about it. When you're faced with a problem, you break it down into smaller pieces, and then you put it all together, one piece at a time. Sure, it's frustrating, and yeah, it takes a while, but in the end, we always find the solution. And when we can't find the pieces, we just make new ones. It's kind of our thing. By this point, Jake could practically hear the aliens' brains short-circuiting. They were stuck on the idea of puzzles and hamsters, completely missing the bigger picture. But that was okay. Jake wasn't here to make them understand right away. He was here to make them feel the absurdity of their assumptions. And let me tell you something else, Jake continued, his tone getting more playful. When humans can't figure something out, we don't sit there sulking, waiting for someone else to do it. We just keep trying. We fail, sure, we make mistakes. But you know what we do after that? We get back up and try again, and again, and again. We keep adapting. That's how we've survived every single crazy challenge the galaxy has thrown at us. And let me tell you something, we're still here. The aliens stared at him, their confusion now bordering on panic. They had no idea how to respond. They couldn't wrap their minds around the fact that humans didn't rely on sheer power or technology to win. Instead, it was all about adapting, something the aliens just didn't understand. Jake's grin never wavered. So yeah, Maybe we're not the biggest, baddest species in the galaxy, but if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that humans don't back down. We adapt and we survive. And when the odds are stacked against us, that's when we shine. So keep laughing. Keep thinking we're just a bunch of hairless monkeys with no real chance. Because when we finally get our hands on that spaceship of ours, it's gonna be game over for you. The aliens had no response. They were too busy processing the sheer absurdity of what Jake had just said, and honestly, Jake didn't care if they understood or not. The important thing was that Earth's greatest strength, human ingenuity, had just been explained in a way that no alien in the galaxy would ever forget. At first, the aliens tried to brush off everything Jake said. After all, how could a species as small and weak as humans possibly pose a threat to the mighty Zakitoth Dominion? They had everything figured out: superior technology, advanced weaponry, and thousands of years of experience conquering planets. What were a few little humans with their primitive tools and sarcastic attitudes compared to that? But the more they spent time with Jake and the rest of the humans, the more the cracks in their smug confidence started to show. Jake's bizarre analogies and stubborn attitude had thrown them off balance, and they couldn't help but feel that something was not right. Every time they tried to impose their logic on humanity, they found themselves getting more and more confused. Vex Thara, the mighty admiral of the Zakitoth Dominion, was the first to show signs of doubt. He had been so sure of himself, so certain that humanity would be no match for his fleet. But now, as he observed the humans with growing concern, something was shifting inside him. There was an unease he couldn't shake. For the first time, Vex found himself staring at Jake with suspicion rather than disdain. "You humans," he muttered, "you're not as simple as I thought. You shouldn't be able to stand up to us. Yet here you are, still standing." His antennae twitched, a sign of irritation. "I've never encountered anything like this before." Jake, of course, had no intention of letting the alien off the hook. "Yeah, I get it. You've been out conquering planets and taking over everything in sight. But here's the deal, Vex. Just because you've got the brawn doesn't mean you've got the brains. And it's starting to look like you've got neither." The remark hit harder than Jake expected. Vex's mandibles clicked together, and for a moment it seemed like he was about to snap. But instead, he held his ground. "We have the knowledge. We have the technology. We've built entire empires. We've wiped out countless species. What do you have?" Jake just gave a lazy shrug. "I told you already. We've got adaptability. The ability to think on our feet. We don't need fancy gadgets to survive. We make it work with what we've got." It was clear now that the aliens were starting to feel the weight of their own overconfidence. They had underestimated humanity, and they were beginning to realize just how deep that mistake ran. But they refused to admit it. Instead, they tried to push forward, trying to outthink the humans using their superior knowledge and tactics. The next attempt came when Vex ordered a test of human technology. "We will see how you fare against our most advanced weapon," he said, hoping to put an end to the foolishness. "Let us see how well your ingenuity holds up in the face of real power." Jake's eyes narrowed as Vex activated a device, a weapon designed to cut through the toughest materials in the galaxy. It hummed to life with a low buzz, sending an ominous wave of energy through the room. "You think this is going to scare me?" Jake said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Nice. Try, but we've faced worse." Vex smirked. "You humans are resilient. I'll give you that. But you are no match for the might of the Zakitoth." As the weapon fired, there was a moment of tense silence. But instead of cutting through the steel wall the way the aliens had expected, it ricocheted off in an unexpected direction, sending a shower of sparks flying everywhere. Jake raised an eyebrow, looking at the aliens with a grin. "Well, that was anticlimactic. Looks like your superior tech just bounced off our shields. Maybe you should get a refund on that." The alien officers around Vex exchanged looks of confusion. They had expected this advanced weapon to easily tear through the human defenses. Instead, it had done nothing. They quickly tried to analyze what had gone wrong, but every theory they came up with only raised more questions. One alien officer, its tentacles twitching nervously, turned to Vex. "Admiral, this is impossible. The readings show that their technology shouldn't be able to withstand this force." Vex's expression darkened. "Impossible? There's no such thing as impossible. They must have a way to compensate for this. We just haven't figured it out yet." But deep down, even Vex couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Humans weren't supposed to be able to pull off tricks like this. Their technology wasn't supposed to be able to withstand the advanced weaponry of the Zakitoth. And yet, here they were, proving him wrong at every turn. The more the aliens tried to apply their superior knowledge to the situation, the more they were confronted with the unpredictability of human behavior. Jake's simple, almost ridiculous explanations started to make more sense. And with every failed attempt to outsmart the humans, their confidence began to crumble. For the first time, Vex was starting to question everything he had believed about the galaxy. He had always thought that power and intelligence went hand in hand, that the strongest species always prevailed, but humanity was proving him wrong. They weren't the most powerful species. They weren't the smartest either, but they had something that the aliens didn't, the ability to adapt. "Why aren't you afraid?" Vex finally asked, his voice low, tinged with frustration. "Why do you keep defying us? You should be terrified. We could wipe you out in an instant." Jake chuckled, leaning back in his chair as if he had all the time in the world. "Because, Vex, we know something you don't. It's not about how big you are or how shiny your weapons are. It's about how well you can adapt to whatever the galaxy throws at you. And the truth is, you guys are great at taking over stuff. But when it comes to thinking on your feet, that's where we win." Vex was silent for a long moment. The tension in the room was palpable. The aliens were no longer laughing at humans. Instead, they were starting to realize that they had grossly underestimated them. What seemed like a joke at first, Jake's sarcasm, the humans' odd ways, was now a major source of concern. It was clear now that humanity wasn't just surviving. They were thriving in ways the aliens couldn't even begin to understand, and for the first time, the Zakitoth Dominion had to face the fact that they might not be the ones holding the upper hand. The tension had been building for hours. The aliens, confident in their superior technology and military strength, had expected an easy victory over the humans. They thought the humans would cower in fear and give up at the first sign of resistance. But Jake and his team had other plans. As the alien fleet descended on Earth, ready to crush the human resistance once and for all, they were in for a rude awakening. The battle began with a deafening roar. The aliens' ships unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, their weapons powerful, enough to level entire cities with a single shot. But Jake wasn't worried. He was calm, focused, and most importantly, ready for this. While the aliens thought they were about to wipe humanity off the map, Jake and his team were already one step ahead, using their creativity to turn the tables. "All right, team," Jake said into his comms, his voice steady and filled with confidence. "Let's show these guys what humans are really made of." The first move was deceptively simple. Jake had already anticipated the alien strategy and had a plan ready. As the alien ships closed in on their position, Jake ordered his crew to fire. A few quick, well-aimed shots, just enough to make the aliens think they were causing damage, but not enough to actually hurt them. It was a distraction, nothing more. The aliens, overconfident as always, took the bait. "Fire all weapons!" Vex shouted, believing he had the upper hand. "This is it. End the human threat once and for all." But what Vex didn't know was that Jake had been quietly rerouting power to the human ship's shields, making them stronger than ever. As the alien blasts hit the shields, they barely made a dent. Jake's eyes glinted with amusement as he watched the aliens' puzzled expressions. Aliens couldn't believe it. "What is this?" one of the officers demanded. "Their shields are stronger than they should be." Jake grinned. "You guys keep underestimating us. We don't just fight with weapons, we fight with brains. You might have the firepower, but we've got strategy." Jake wasn't finished yet. While the aliens were distracted by their own confusion, Jake ordered his fleet to move into position. The humans had learned how to use their surroundings to their advantage, something the aliens had never considered. Jake's team launched a series of small, agile ships that weaved in and out of the alien fleet, dodging the aliens' massive ships with surprising speed. "Follow them!" Vex barked, frustrated by the humans' unpredictability. "Don't let them escape!" But the aliens were slow to react. They didn't understand that the humans were using the terrain around them, asteroids, debris, even the moon itself as cover. The aliens were used to overwhelming force, not the clever tactics that humans were now employing. As the alien fleet pursued the human ships, Jake made his move. He ordered his team to release a series of drones, each one carrying small but highly effective EMP devices. The drones scattered through the chaos, getting closer and closer to the alien ships. With a well-timed signal, Jake activated the EMPs. The alien ships, which had been so sure of their technological superiority, suddenly went dark. Their weapons, shields, and communication systems all shut down. The aliens' confidence faltered. For the first time since the battle had begun, "What happened?" one of the aliens shouted. "Our systems are down! We can't track their ships!" Jake chuckled into his comms. "You know, Vex, I was hoping you'd get a taste of your own medicine. It's kind of cute that you thought you could just blast your way through everything. Humans don't just rely on firepower. We know how to make things stop." The aliens scrambled to get their systems back online. But by then it was too late. The human ships, using their superior agility and knowledge of the terrain, had already taken advantage of the situation. The alien ships were now scattered and disoriented, easy targets for the human fleet. Jake's team wasted no time. They launched a series of precision strikes, knocking out the alien weapons one by one. Each strike was calculated, carefully planned, and executed with perfect timing. The aliens, who had once thought of humans as nothing more than pests, were now on the defensive, struggling to recover from the unexpected turn of events. Vex Thara watched in disbelief as his fleet began to fall apart. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "We are superior. How are they doing this?" Jake's voice came through loud and clear. "You know, Vex, sometimes the strongest weapon isn't the biggest or the most powerful. It's the one that catches you off guard. You've got all your fancy tech, but you didn't account for one thing. Humans think outside the box. We adapt, we improvise, and we never give up. You should have known better than to underestimate us." Vex's mandibles clicked angrily. "This isn't over, human. We still have the upper hand." Jake laughed. "You're welcome to think that, but the truth is you've been playing checkers while we've been playing chess, and guess what? Your queen's about to be taken." With that, Jake gave the order for the final push. The humans launched their last round of attacks, overwhelming the weakened alien fleet. One by one, the alien ships were disabled, their weapons now useless against the cunning human strategies. The battle was coming to an end, and the aliens could no longer deny the truth. Humans had outsmarted them at every turn. The Zakiturth dominions, once feared fleet, was in disarray, their commanders defeated by the very species they had laughed at. Vex Thara, now cornered, did the only thing he could think of. He sent out a distress signal, hoping to escape before it was too late, but the humans were ready for that too. Jake had anticipated every move, and with one last tactical strike, the Zakiturth's flagship was brought to a halt. With the final alien ship disabled, Jake let out a sigh of relief. "That's how it's done," he said, wiping the sweat off his brow. "Not with brute force, but with brains, resourcefulness, and a lot of patience." As the alien fleet retreated, Jake looked around at his crew. They had done it. Against all odds, they had outwitted the aliens. The humans had shown the galaxy that there was more to being powerful than just strength and technology. Jake's voice came through the comms again, this time with a bit of pride. Well, that's one way to deal with bullies. Now, let's go. Home. The alien fleet was in disarray. What had started as a sure victory had quickly turned into a humiliating defeat. The once mighty Zakitoth Dominion, known for their advanced weaponry and ruthless conquests, had been outsmarted by a group of humans who were supposed to be nothing more than an insignificant species. The Zakitoth commanders, still reeling from the unexpected defeat, gathered in a makeshift war room aboard their flagship. They were no longer the ones calling the shots. The human fleet had taken control, and now it was the aliens who were. On the defensive, Vexthara, the Zakitoth admiral, sat in stunned silence, staring out at the retreating human ships. His antennae twitched with frustration, but no words came. For the first time in his long career, he felt utterly powerless. Around him, the other alien officers shifted uncomfortably. They had never encountered anything like this before. How had the humans managed to turn the tide? How had they used their limited resources to defeat a force as powerful as theirs? One of the officers, a nervous-looking creature with tentacles, spoke up. "Admiral, I don't understand. How did this happen? We had everything. Superior weapons, better technology, more troops. The humans shouldn't have been able to touch us." Vex let out a frustrated growl, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "I don't know," he muttered. "We underestimated them. We thought they were weak, easily crushed. But these humans, they've got something we didn't expect." Another officer, looking equally confused, asked, "What do you mean? Their technology was primitive. They barely had any real weapons. How could they possibly stand up to us?" Vex's eyes narrowed. He had never been one to admit defeat easily, but the evidence was undeniable. "It's not their technology," he said slowly. "It's their adaptability. They don't rely on brute force like we do. They're unpredictable. They think outside the box. They use whatever they can to make things work, even when they don't have the advantage." The officer was still trying to wrap his mind around this. "But they're just humans. How could they do this? We were supposed to be the superior species." Vex shook his head, his frustration growing. "We were wrong. We thought that power alone would be enough, but it's not. These humans, they didn't play by the same rules we did. And that's what made them dangerous. As the aliens tried to process their defeat, they couldn't shake the realization that they had underestimated humanity in ways they couldn't even begin to understand. They had thought they were invincible, that their strength and technology would crush any resistance. But instead, they had been outwitted at every turn by a species they had dismissed as weak. Meanwhile, Jake Bennett, having led the humans to victory, was enjoying every moment of it. He had known from the start that the aliens would make the mistake of underestimating humanity. They had thought they could just steamroll Earth, but Jake's confidence in human ingenuity had been the key to their success. Jake stood at the front of the room, looking at the defeated alien officers with a smug grin. "So, how's that superior technology working out for you now?" he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I mean, you guys had all the fancy toys, the big weapons, and you still couldn't get the job done. But don't worry, we humans, we just kept it simple." The aliens exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had never been talked to like this, especially not by a human. But they knew that Jake had a point. They had relied on their supposed superiority, but it hadn't been enough. Vex's antennae drooped in resignation. "You were right," he muttered, clearly unwilling to admit it aloud. "We were wrong about you. Humans are not as weak as we thought." Jake gave a lazy shrug. "Told you, I mean, you guys came in here with all this swagger, thinking you could just squash us like bugs, and yet here we are. You're leaving with your tails between your legs, and we're still standing." The alien officers looked at each other, the weight of their defeat settling in. They had been so sure of themselves, so convinced that humanity was nothing more than an afterthought in the grand scheme of things. But now they were forced to accept the truth. They had underestimated Earth in a way that would cost them dearly. Maybe we have a lot to learn from you, human," Vex finally admitted, though the words seemed to pain him. "You're not like the other species we've conquered. You're unpredictable. You're resourceful. And that's what makes you dangerous." Jake nodded, his grin never fading. "Yep, that's the thing you never understood. We don't need to be the biggest or the strongest. We just need to be the smartest. And when it comes to thinking on our feet, we've got that covered." Vex didn't reply. There was nothing more to say. The battle was over and the humans had won. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, had been humbled by a species they had never taken seriously. It was a hard lesson to learn, but one that would stay with them for a long time. As the alien fleet retreated, Jake turned to his team, his tone light and sarcastic as always. "Well, that was fun, wasn't it? I'm sure the Zakiturth will be a little more careful the next time they decide to pick on us." The crew chuckled, but there was a sense of pride in the air. They had done the impossible. They had stood up to the aliens and come out on top. Humanity had proven that even when the odds were stacked against them, they could always find a way to adapt, to outthink, and to come out victorious. As the humans celebrated their unexpected triumph, Vex and his fleet were left with a harsh truth. They had underestimated Earth, and it was a mistake they wouldn't soon forget. The once unstoppable alien force had been outwitted by the most unlikely of adversaries, the humble, resourceful humans. Jake stood in front of his crew, a smug grin still plastered on his face as he watched the alien fleet retreat. The once proud Zakiturth had been brought down by the most unexpected force, humanity. Jake shook his head, letting out a dramatic sigh as if the whole victory had been too easy. "Well, folks, looks like we've proven a point. The aliens came here, all big and bad, thinking they were going to wipe us off the map. And instead, they're heading back home with their tails between their legs. Guess that's what happens when you underestimate humans." He paused for a second, giving the crew a knowing look. "And hey, if you thought this was impressive, just wait until we start taking on the next big threat. If there's one thing we've learned today, it's that humans don't back down. We might not always have the biggest guns, but we sure as heck know how to outsmart the competition." Jake leaned forward, resting his hands on the table as he looked directly at the audience. "Now, before you go off thinking, 'Hey, I want to see more of these humans taking down some aliens,' I've got a little favor to ask. If you liked the show, go ahead and hit that like button. You know, just to show the universe that humans can be pretty awesome when they put their minds to it." He gave a sly smile. "And if you want to keep up with more of our brilliantly sarcastic victories, like, say, next time we humiliate another alien empire, make sure to subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. We've got a whole lot more surprises coming your way, and this time we might even use some of those superior alien technologies. Or maybe we'll just keep doing it the human way." Jake waved his hand in a casual dismissal. "And while you're at it, don't forget to share this with your friends. Spread the word, because humanity's coming for you. And we're not leaving until we've turned the whole galaxy on its head. Who knows? Maybe next time we'll take on even bigger threats. But don't worry, we'll still be laughing all the way to victory." With a wink, he finished. "So, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more. After all, you wouldn't want to miss the next time we prove that humans can totally outsmart the galaxy's biggest bullies. Stay tuned, Earthlings. This show's just getting started. And there you have it, folks. Humanity stands victorious. Once again, proving that with a little creativity, some humor, and a lot of never-give-up attitude, we can take on even the toughest opponents. The Zacaturth might be retreating, but don't worry, this won't be the last you see of us. If you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The future's looking bright, and who knows what challenges humanity will face next. Thanks for watching, and remember, Earth may be small, but it's never out of the fight. See you next time.